Hello and welcome back to the Musings podcast. This is
Arman.
Praveena, and today we have an amazing creator with us, and that is
Deep. I go by just Deep Drama on Instagram, but my name is Deep. Not Pradeep, not Sudeep, not Mandeep. It's just Deep.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Really happy to have you here.
Is this your first time
On a podcast?
on a podcast?
No, this is my third time on a podcast.
Oh, so you're the pro here. Okay, cool. So we want to jump into, obviously you create content, doing makeup and having fun generally on Instagram. So what is it like to be a creator, especially like a male creator who's doing makeup and being in that space?
One, it's very privileged because had I not had supportive friends or a supportive set of parents, it would be really difficult to be who I am as an individual, especially in a country like this. It's great because I get to do what I love. I don't have somebody limiting my creativity like I did back in 2019 when I switched jobs from fashion to creating content full time. Because I was working for somebody else, my creativity was limited to what suited the brand. So I was on the brand aesthetic,
Yeah.
not my aesthetic, which
Right.
kind of limits creativity, which I don't really appreciate. So I'm like, okay, I didn't know the pandemic was going to happen and India was going to go on a complete lockdown. But before a month of lockdown, I switched, like, okay, I told my mom, I can't do this anymore. I want to leave. Do you guys understand Marathi?
Yeah, a little bit.
So I told my mother, "Mala nahi jamate, me sodnar," and then I just one day up and left. Also, like because we had other internal issues in office, so
But
I
it's
switched to
crazy
creating
that you say that
content.
it's a privilege because, I mean, everyone should feel supported
Yes.
in doing whatever they do.
Yes.
So it's crazy that you say it's a privilege. I
It
think
is, and-
it should be the bare
Yeah,
minimum.
and I do like acknowledge that I am privileged to have a space like this, which is why I'm creating a space where other people feel comfortable to be
That's
be their own
awesome.
selves.
When did you start doing makeup? Like, and what was it like? Like, did your parents react adversely initially, and then eventually come around to it? What was that like?
I started putting makeup on myself when I was in school, like 8th standard, 9th standard. I would go to my sister's bag, find her lip gloss, find her mascara, try it on. But then I actively started doing makeup on myself when I was 15, 16, like just graduated from high school, going into junior college, going into university, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. Although my makeup skills back then were not that great. I didn't know how to match foundations. I didn't know what a concealer was.
And
I
you
would
learned
look like a
yourself?
pale ghost. Yeah, and I learned
I
it
still
myself.
can't match my foundation.
I mean, I can sometimes, but not all the time because undertones are a little bit.
I have to go to the store person and they're like,
Yeah.
can you please match my face? And
You know what? If you go to this website called foundation.com and you enter your shade that you're currently using, you can find a list of shades that match the same shade from different brands. So it's like very easy. Like Spotify, but for makeup. Like foundation specific.
today I
Like,
learned.
no, not Spotify, sorry. Shazam, but for foundations and concealers.
I've only had one experience of someone trying to put makeup on me, and they got exasperated because they were trying to cover up my under eyes, and
We done finished the
it's,
entire
it's not an easy job. Like, there were women with me who were shooting for the same thing, and they started and got done like 15 minutes before
Yeah.
I did, because she was just like, I can't blend this with the rest of your
Did she
face.
color correct your under eyes?
I don't know what she did. She was doing stuff. I didn't know what she was doing. That was
Okay.
the worst part, because I was just sitting there not knowing what's happening around me, because I know nothing about makeup despite having like worked in the beauty industry for a while. I understand the different products and
Yeah.
what they're for, but how to use them, I've never like personally tried makeup on or anything. The only thing I do is skincare, and that also started when I started working at Nykaa.
How
But
was
you
the-
work with them a lot, right?
I do work with them a lot because Nykaa is probably one of the biggest beauty platforms in India right now. And there's really fun people to work with.
One interesting thing that I've had encounter with makeup is having my boyfriend guess what a makeup product does.
Yeah.
And it's actually mind blowing how little they know about makeup. Like, I mean, I guess we don't know. I don't know anything about football, so maybe that's also a stereotype. but But I've asked my boyfriend, oh, what does this thing do? And he'd look at an eyeliner and he's like, is this a lip gloss? And I'm like, it's not even, it's black.
And it's not thick enough to hold a lip gloss.
You tell him.
Yeah, but we don't know. Like I was 28 when for the first time I learned that hey, sunscreen isn't just something that you put on when you're going to the beach.
Yeah.
It's like necessary. It's only when all the damage that had to be done to this thing was already done by the time I started using a moisturizer, a sunscreen, and then I suddenly got super into it and I started putting whatever the hell I wanted to on my face. I was like hyaluronic acid, vitamin C, and then things are burning, and if you don't know what you're doing,
Oh yeah, things have burnt on this skin also.
yeah, you can get in deep trouble.
Yeah.
In deep trouble.
But
It's
that's
gonna be happening today.
I
Yeah,
know.
the bar for
prepared.
humor is.
I'm
underground.
prepared for it.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you're here because I've really, we've always had conversations about very cishet dating on this platform here so far because both of us, she has a boyfriend, I'm mostly dating girls. And I have a couple of very close friends from the LGBTQ community. And I know that dating experience is very difficult. So I wanted to touch
Yeah.
upon that a little bit because when the power dynamics are very different
Yes.
when it's a guy and a girl dating. How it goes is like you go on the app, you're a guy, you don't have a lot of people incoming to you. You have to do the outreach. You have to be the person who's always like, hey, here's an interesting comment on something I saw on your profile. Hope this is better than what others are writing to you, and that it's not a pic. And you know, you send a message to like
Yeah.
100 people, 10 of them, if you're really in the top 5% of good-looking people and with good profiles, you'll get responses. Out of those, one will respond to you when you
Yeah.
try to have a conversation, and then you'll be like, oh, this person I'm not actually that interested in. And like, if you're very, very lucky, the conversation turns into something, and 3-4 weeks later, you have a date. I know that
That's such a long
I'm
process.
exhausted just listening to
it's
that.
exasperating. And I'm not even going into the nitty gritties. I've
Yeah.
just given the top level, like hawk's eye view of this. So, what's it? How does it differ for when you're a guy trying to date a guy?
I think because of Grindr is the dating app for those of you. Not like a date. It started as a dating app, but now it's purely like a hookup
Yeah.
app only for like gay men and like men who want to experiment. I think because of Grindr, the whole notion of dating has, in my opinion, gone really down. Like on Grindr, you will find men only to have sex,
Yeah.
right? And that has now carried on to other dating apps also. Like people primarily just want to these days, right? And it's exhausting
Yeah.
because it's
Especially if you're not a person who's looking for that and that's the only platform that's inclusive.
And when
Yeah.
you are only looking for somebody to you obviously only specifically look at how they look or how they appear or how they present themselves, which I feel is very disturbing to one's mental health because you have to put so much effort in how you present yourself to be appealing to people, which honestly doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really difficult to find people to date per se when you are one open to creating content. So basically being like a public figure or like somebody who's known within the community and also outside the community. Like there have been instances where people are like, oh, you're very intimidating because of the numbers you have on social media, or you're very out there. What if you put us on your social media? I'm like, sweetie, I don't want to put you on my social media. You're not that pretty. I get paid for it. Right?
Yeah.
So it's people have a lot of assumptions, which I can't do anything about, but it's very difficult to
Yeah.
date.
Yeah.
But
as an openly
usually
gay
I've
man.
seen the process, right, is usually like, okay, you start talking to someone and then it's like you hang out and then you have the friends with benefits phase
Yeah.
and then you're in a situationship and then you're deciding if you want to be exclusive or not exclusive and then you finally start dating. Now you're like, okay, are we in a monogamous relationship or is it like an open relationship or there's just so many different ways this
Yeah.
can go.
Yeah.
So is that the same for like your experience as well. Can you say the same for your experience? Or,
Yes.
Yeah.
There are multiple tracks where the train can go on.
Yeah.
Usually it goes either sex or situationship, because when you are restricted of something for so long, like freedom or like just being out or being yourself, you don't want to lose that if somebody outs you, right? Or
Right.
if your identity is put out there, you don't want to lose that bit of adrenaline or like um, that rush that you get when you're meeting somebody on the down low or just having fun. But also you compromise on your happiness. You compromise on a part of you that ideally should be acknowledged and celebrated, but
Yeah.
you don't. And that's the choice that most people make, or most men have made. Um,
When I understood this culture a little lesser, it was initially super, like, I used to get jealous of what the culture is in dating amongst gay men versus straight people. Because with straight people, it's so complicated, and people come to the point of what they're looking for so late and sometimes never. Versus I saw how the culture was there and it was very, very direct. Everyone was super direct about, hey, I'm a top.
Yeah.
I have 4 out of 6 abs. Versus here, but I understood over time that these are two really, really extreme scenarios.
Very extreme.
And how it should be is somewhere in the middle of this, and that's missing across the dating spectrum right now.
Exactly.
It's everything,
Communication.
like everything devolves into a situationship, and like it's very rare from the online dating game to really end up with something meaningful.
Yeah.
But
Which is
how do
very
you
sad.
define situationships? Because there's so much overlap in the stages of dating. Because it's like situationships, but how is that different from friends with benefits?
It's usually a situationship for one person.
Yes.
And friends with benefits if both people are okay with it?
Like, what I think is a situationship is, in the simplest of terms, I like you, you like me. We will not tell each other we like each other, but I will not like you going around with somebody else.
That
But
sounds
why
like,
is that? Why are we so reluctant to let someone, like, why is that vulnerability? Because it's a change, right? It didn't
Yeah.
used to be like this.
Yeah.
And in the last 5-10 years, it started becoming more and more like this. Why are we so against letting a person know that we're into them? Is it because there's so much more out there that is super accessible through an app? So we're like, oh, I might
Probably.
miss out on other options.
yeah,
I-
it's a part of it is, oh, there might be something better
Yeah.
coming. And a part of it is,
Probably
if
they're
you
not.
ask 4 out of 5 people now, they're commitment phobic.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't want to be in a
Yeah.
relationship, but I want the cozy, warm feeling of being
They
in a
don't want to
relationship.
put in the effort.
To be fair, I'm attacking myself here because even I'm like even I'm like this. I start talking to someone and very early on I'll be like, hey, by the way, you should know, because all the time I'm like, hey, I can see myself hanging out with this person, but I don't know if I can see myself spending a lot of time with this person, and that gets verified very quickly. I'm with the person for a while, and then I'm like, okay, now I'd like you to go, and I'd like to have my own time. Freedom comes with an addiction to freedom as well.
Exactly.
I think it's two things. One is we never had like a reference to how dating would work because our parents never dated. I mean, of course, there were exceptions, but they were always in an arrangement where it
Yeah.
was like, you love, you propose. It's like
Yeah, or here's
immediate.
arranged marriage.
Or it's an arranged
Yeah.
marriage. So we don't have a point of reference that, combined with having so much options, it's just like I could be on Grindr, I could be on like, going to a bar and just meeting anyone,
Yeah.
or I could just hook up with a friend.
Yeah.
It's like so much freedom combined with not having like a direction has just led us to spiral on, is this person really right for me, or should I be waiting out for something that's more exciting, more passionate, more.
The right person.
Yeah,
But
the
thing
right
is,
person.
how will you find your right person if you don't spend enough time with them, or if you don't communicate with them of what you want, what you like, what they want, what they like, or where you see yourself with them, how you see yourself with them. Are you monogamous? Are you poly? And all these new terms that have just been thrown at you in a very chaotic world right now where it's just messed up.
Yeah.
It makes me so anxious.
I actually had a friend recently tell me, I find physical intimacy like more of a clinical thing. I don't need it. I can exist in a relationship without, like, I obviously need it, but that's not my number one priority. And I was like, just walk me through why you feel it's clinical. She was like, I don't always look for the best intimate partner. But as long as they are able to communicate, work with me, and get better at it, I'm fine with that. And I was like, but that's what healthy intimacy is.
Exactly. And
It's
that's the
not
thing.
clinical. That means you just enjoy it and you care about it enough to talk about it and work on it like any other skill.
Yeah.
You can't walk out of the door and be
Facts.
like, be prepared to like blow somebody else's mind because you don't
You
know how they work.
exactly. What if your body is not compatible with their body? What if something just irks you?
Yeah. But I
See,
do.
I think people are scared of communicating because they feel that if they do communicate, they may come off as being vulnerable or being too needy. But that's also self-doubt and insecurities that you need to work
You
on.
can't not be vulnerable and
Exactly.
without.
That's what I'm trying to tell.
If you're in a relationship, healthy relationship, you're supposed to be vulnerable. If you can't, then don't be in a relationship.
I just got out of a situation, which is also like, communicate.
I want to spice things up by asking you, have you ever been on a dating app
Yes.
where you know, yes, I spoke about Grindr. But no, have you ever been on a dating app where you've matched with like a straight guy?
Yeah,
and
so many times.
Really?
There are so many
Super
straight
common.
guys on Grindr
Yeah.
who are like, oh, I'm not gay, but I really want you to suck my. I'm like, sweetie, that's gay.
That's true. That's what? Because I heard recently that there are people who get married almost.
Oh,
and
there are married men.
There are
on
married
Grindr as
married
well.
people who are just like, yeah, I'm married, but that's for society. But on the side, I'm on Grindr living it up. And I'm like,
There have been
what
instances.
about your wife?
Yeah, but I've learned not to judge that because also people have grown up in situations where it's
Yeah.
they can't
Of
be
course.
out and they've landed.
Yeah, like no judgment there, but
Of course, but if you know that you're gay and you know the society is not going to accept you and you're getting into a situation where it's an arrangement or
You
something.
could also be figuring things out. It may also be, hey, I don't know, and I've always been curious about this, so I want to try it out, and then.
no, but that's the thing. You try
it's
it out
messy.
once, twice. You don't try it out 15 times.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also not just about you if you're married.
Yeah, correct.
So
Absolutely.
it's one thing being in a mutual agreement where you're like, okay, this is our scene, we live our lives, and for society, we are a married couple sitting in one
Yeah.
house. But it's a whole other thing if you are on your self-discovery journey while dragging someone
communicating.
else with you, right? So that's a completely different situation. So that's what I was getting at. I was like, are there...
There have been times.
So you could be like ruining lives right now. I love that power. Of late, we are seeing a lot of media representation for the queer community, right? So how accurate
But it's a lot more than before, for sure.
Yeah.
Significantly, there's been a
Yes.
difference, yes. Is it accurate? Sometimes no, but there have been internationally shows like, say, Heartstopper, Sex Education. There is definitely an increase in representation, but you have to question whether it is the right representation or not, because for the longest time, Bollywood and the mainstream media has always made a mockery of primarily gay men and like queer individuals. They've always stereotyped them. So when you look at a show that has a queer character, you question it, whether it's, in your opinion, the right representation or not. Is it a mockery? Is it an exaggeration? Is it a caricature? You
Yeah.
question yourself, you question it on the socials, say, what do you guys think? And then you start a conversation, and that's how it snowballs into a bigger conversation.
We're starting to get to a point where instead of treating people from the community as caricatures,
Yeah.
we're starting to treat them as, these are people who are part of the same society. There's a lot more in common than we have.
Yeah.
That's different. But it's interesting that you brought up Heartstopper, because I remember watching that show and thinking like, oh, this is what it feels like when you're watching a show and your community feels like it's the biggest minority on the planet because
Exactly.
everyone in that show is from the community.
Yeah.
There's like maybe one straight character. I'm like, which school is just 97% LGBTQI? There were no straight characters in that show, but I do agree with you. Like, the representation of the community was just, it wasn't just all gay men are talking like that. And,
Exactly.
no. There are people who are flamboyant in the straight community, in the LGBTQIA community. There
For
are people
sure.
who are super reserved in both communities. And people are people.
Yes.
And that's starting to show up even in Indian media now. Made in Heaven just came out, season 2. Season 1 was epic. I loved it. I
Phenomenal,
remember
yeah.
watching it with my friends and just being like, I can't believe that an Indian TV show, how is this not getting struck down? I was super impressed.
Yeah.
And now we have someone like Trinetra who's on the show. And I haven't watched it, but I'm going to make an assumption that she would have made sure that her representation is also
Yeah, that's the
correct,
thing.
more or
Like,
less.
Trinetra being a trans individual, playing a trans character on a mainstream show is such a milestone for the community, for the media industry as well, because it's always been a man, a cishet man playing a transgender role, or
Right.
a cishet woman playing a transgender role. There's never been that accurate of a representation or casting in a mainstream show that has done so well in the previous season, right? So, which is, I think, a really great.
Which is what is nice about OTT platforms, right? Because I don't think, like, in the big screen, like mainstream media, cinemas, you're going to see that representation come in so organically.
Yeah.
But with OTT platforms and social media also being a part of it, I feel like a lot of people are now coming up with like honest, authentic versions
Yes.
of the community, and they're really representing it well, which is great. But I think a lot of it has to do with people like you who are on platforms like
Yeah.
this, making sure, like you said in the beginning, where people have a safe space and you are creating that for that
Yeah.
conversation to go to bigger platforms.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, the more you see, the more you know, like out of
Yeah.
sight, out of mind, which is why representation is so important, especially in the mainstream media, because one, in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, not everybody has access to, say, Netflix or like Prime or Hotstar. But they can spend, say, 200 rupees to watch a Salman Khan movie or a Shah Rukh Khan movie.
Right.
Willingly go and watch it in the theater, right? So if you reach to those masses, right, the more they see, the more they know, even if they may not agree to it, they at least know that there are people out there who are trying to create a safe space for themselves or people like them, right?
It's also very important to not vilify the masses
Yeah.
that don't have access to this information, that don't have access to a language that's become prevalent in certain circles that other people just don't have. I was very, very surprised to see this in Rocky or Rani. There's a scene where Ranveer Singh talks about like, bro, I didn't grow up with any of this language. I
Yeah.
don't know how to be super sensitive about the words that are coming out of my mouth. Please also understand my intent.
Yeah.
I don't intend to hurt you. I just don't know the language you speak
Yeah.
to talk about certain things. So tell me when something's a problem, and I'll learn with you. I come from a place of love. And it's also important that when we talk about communities or audiences that don't necessarily know this language, that we give them that leeway to also learn, put media out there,
Agreed.
and then eventually change comes. That's how it's happened. We've
Yes.
seen the conversations and the environment around this community change so much in the last 10 years. We're able to have this conversation so openly right now. We couldn't have had this about 10
No,
years ago.
absolutely not. Like, that's the thing, because um, lately what has happened is, one, people want, like, especially people from the community, want everybody to be sensitive and aware of what they are, who they are, but they're not willing to take time out and reach out to people or educate somebody else who may not know things, especially one, people who don't speak English fluently or English is
Right.
not their primary language of communication. How do you explain to somebody a polyamorous relationship? Or
Yeah.
how do you explain to somebody what an NB is, right?
Also, it's not the job of people going through the struggle to always educate other people.
No, agreed. But
Because
the
it's
thing-
like you're already going through it. You shouldn't be expected to sit and school other people on what your struggles
Which
are.
is where representation comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because it's media that's meant for everyone
yeah.
that then helps normalize.
Yeah. But
New
I mean,
topics.
on a personal level, media is different. But in your everyday life, when you see someone ignorant or someone who doesn't understand your world too well, you don't have to sit and school them. That's not your responsibility because it's kind of like you have had enough going through it yourself, and it's fine if people want to educate other people, but you shouldn't be forced to educate other people who are ignorant
Yeah.
because they are choosing to be ignorant.
True.
You're
I
just
mean,
choosing to be yourself.
Google is at your fingertips. Use it.
Just use it. It's 2023. There's no reason to be an ignorant.
That's a very good point for us to end this. This got quite educational. This was a lot more serious than
Yeah.
our other episodes. But I'm glad. Like,
This conversation needs to happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a conversation that's super necessary. And yeah, thanks, Deep. I
welcome.
think you've been fantastic. Thank you so
you.
much for
We
taking the
have
time out to
something
come.
special for you
Yeah.
before you leave.
Thank you.
This is everything you will ever need. Oh my god, that was satisfying as hell. Can you like do an ASMR thing with the box? Ooh. I'm gonna be listening to that real close.
Yay, thank you.
That's everything you'll need to have an amazing dating life.
Thank you.
Where is it? Bye.
We have a tradition where we
Tradition to
say
say
bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Like, share, subscribe, all the things, bell icon.
Do all that.
My phone is always on silent, which is why I miss all calls all the time.
You'd never miss my call.
I actually never miss calls because I'm always on my phone. But like, if I don't have it, if it's in my pocket, I'll never know. If you're dying and you call me,
Something really
Too bad.
creepy happened this morning. I was like, my flatmate was like, here, check the phone. She wanted me to check a link of a dog. And I checked, and we were in the kitchen when I checked. And then I finished making my meal or whatever. And then I was like, oh, where's my phone? And then she called, it was in the dining room. But I just checked my phone in the kitchen together with her.
yeah, your nose ring is pura.